All right, it looks like we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Cantina Cocktail Hour. It is great to see you again. Really excited to talk toys. I mean, what better is there to do on a Friday night than I have some beverages and talk everybody's favorite hobby? So I know we like doing that here. I know everybody that I talk to likes doing it at least online, not maybe in person. That'd be a completely different story. I don't know. What about you, Dan? What do you think?
Oh, I talk toys all the time to anybody that will listen, but that's few and far between these days because there's not really all that much to find in stores. So it's all online. Yeah, like you were saying.
Totally.
Yeah,
Well, welcome to the show. This is your
thank
first
you.
time, on Cocktail Hour. I know I've had you on Cantina Chatter, I've had you on the Vintage Collection podcast, but this is the first time having you on Cocktail Hour. So welcome.
My plan is to be on every single podcast there is at some point in time.
Plenty of time for that. So since this is Cocktail Hour, I got to ask, what are you sipping on this evening?
Well, I have my whiskey. Right, can you see? Yeah, my whiskey right here.
Nice.
So I'll be finishing this throughout the show.
Cool.
Slowly.
Cool.
You don't drink that fast.
Yeah. No. You take your time. So for me, I have a frozen strawberry margarita that I just
Nice,
prepared.
nice.
And yeah, so it's a classic. Ice, strawberries, simple syrup, and some tequila. And I'm using Casamigos tequila, and it's one of my favorite tequilas. And yeah, just garnish with a little strawberry, and enjoy. Good for
Wow.
these warmer summer days for sure.
Yeah. It was
Well,
nice today. It was about 88, I think. So that's not too bad. Cheers.
cheers, delightful. Oh yeah. Well, cool. So I think our friend Chris is here. I took a nap so I could watch this tonight.
I did too, just for the record.
Nice. Nice. Yes, I know. Great to see Chris here. Great to see everybody in the chat, everyone that's filtering in. So yeah, awesome. So I think the last time I talked to you, was it on the Vintage Collection podcast? Is that the last time we
Yes.
talked? Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that was in I think April. Somewhere in there.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, time flies this year. It's crazy. Um, but yeah, that was a cool chat. I think we talked about the Vintage Collection 1.0 versus the Vintage Collection 2.0 and how they were different and how things are different at Hasbro and the different kinds of decisions we're seeing made. That was basically like the bulk of what we talked about in that episode.
Yeah. I had fun. I always enjoy talking about Star Wars figures, period. Well, Star Wars in general, but Star Wars collecting has always been a passion of mine since I was a kid. So now I'm 52 years old. I don't see that going away anytime soon. So,
Yeah, you're old enough to be a granddad. And on that note,
oh, yeah.
congratulations.
As a matter of fact, yeah, just a couple, well, let's see, 7 weeks now, I think. 7 weeks old.
That's
I am now Opa Curto. So that is my
awesome.
opted to use that name because that is German, and um, we wanted to celebrate that a little bit. And yeah, anyway, he's
Nice.
adorable. He's cute. I can't
Nice.
wait to see him again.
Aw. Yeah, I've seen your photos and yeah, no, huge congrats. That's amazing.
Thank
Definitely,
you. Thank you.
definitely a milestone. So super cool.
Well, you're only as old as you feel, right? So
That's what they say.
yeah. I'm a kid at heart forever.
As all we all. Um, yeah, so what are any latest acquisitions for you, TVC toys that you've added to your collection?
Recently I've been actually not getting the vintage collection as much. I mean, there's not much to get. So I've been kind of going back into the Disney park Build-A-Droids, right? If you know that the Build-A-Droid concept was in the Legacy collection through Hasbro, but then Disney kind of had it added to their theme parks. So you get off the Star Tours ride, and in 2012 you had a bunch of astromech droids that you could build.
Mm.
2015 they had another batch, and then they had protocol droids, and then they've had many special editions and exclusives, and those I've been able to keep up with. But it's the park droids that I haven't, because I don't go to Disney World every single year, right?
Mm.
So slowly trying to get caught up into those. And I just ordered an orange one with a sombrero today on eBay.
Oh, wow. I haven't seen that one. Oh, that sounds cute.
Yeah,
I know Chris loves the Disney park stuff. He's a big fan of the Droid stuff that they make at the Disney parks. He loves the Sandcrawler. It's his favorite vehicle of all time.
yeah.
So does Brett over at Bay at the School. They love that stuff very, very, very much.
I don't have the Sandcrawler, but I am trying. There was an eBay auction just last week with the Gonk Droid and the Jawas that come with the Sandcrawler. So I was like, well, I want those. And even if someday I do get the Sandcrawler, I could have multiples. So I'm
Nice.
eyeballing those right now.
That's cool. That's cool. So I see Dan O is in the chat. Hey Dan O, it's great to see you here, friend.
Welcome.
One of our contributors on Cantina Chatter. Awesome, awesome. Well, cool. Yeah, no, those droids are neat. I haven't myself been that great about keeping up with them. I have been I was collecting them more early on when I was going to the parks, like I'm talking, 5, 6 years ago, more
Right.
frequently. And but I've kind of not, and they haven't all gone online, in the Disney store, Shop Disney. So I've missed out on
Right.
several. And I know we were just talking recently about the rainbow droid that we thought was pretty cool. And
Yeah, if anybody has an extra one that's not super expensive on eBay prices, I would like to acquire one of those.
yeah, I'm in
That
the
I
same
missed out
boat.
on, and like you said, it never went on the shop. So, oh well. I have a friend in Florida that sometimes tracks those down for me, but I don't know. This one I totally, even though I knew it when it came out, I kind of figured I would get it eventually, and it just kind of, I guess, came and went really quick.
Yeah. Yeah, I want one of those too, and that it just looks really cool. The color. I mean, I know it's silly, and like Chris is saying, those are bootlegs and stuff, but I mean, they're fun. I mean, I can't take this stuff too seriously. A rainbow
Yeah.
astromech droid. I mean, it's not meant to be taken seriously, so I
Well,
really can't.
I like Astromechs. I have a very large collection of them now, obviously, but I don't like the rainbow prototype Vader and the Fett that's out now. I don't like those. I don't have any interest in that, but I do like the idea. I think of the rainbow R2D2, whatever they call it. I can't remember, but yeah, and it's sort of like gonna bother me now for the rest of my life that I don't have that one, you know.
Mhm.
But who knows?
Nice.
Maybe next Pride Month or whatever, it'll come back again. So.
Yeah, totally. Looks like we got a super chat from Kareem. Kareem, that is very sweet. Thank you very much. We really, really appreciate that. Yeah, and Dano says that the Sandcrawler is so good. I haven't gotten the Disney Park Sandcrawler. I do have, you can see it right over here, the Hot Topic one, I think it was,
Mhm.
back in 2004, based off the vintage mold. That's good enough for me. I know a lot of people want a huge HasLab Sandcrawler, and I'll admit that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Running out of room with these HasLabs, and the bigger this stuff gets, yeah. So I'm happy if this is all we ever get. I'm okay with it, honestly.
Yeah, I have that one, which is based on the vintage remote control, if I remember correctly, right? It's based on that size and that scale, which I had that when I was a kid. So every time that they came out with a new version, I inevitably tracked those down, and I think that is the last one that I have. But I didn't get the Disney one yet. Someday.
Yeah, yeah. It's yeah. Someday, I think it still goes online every now and again on Shop Disney, and they have pretty good shipping. Sometimes it's free. I think on an expensive item like that, it'll be free.
The last ones
So
I got from them were the color changing droids. That was kind of a cool. I mean, I dipped them in water once, and that was cool. I watched it change, and that was it. And then they went into storage like everything else.
yeah, I don't have those yet. I do have the what else I didn't get is they have that droid factory, right? Where you put them, like you use those droids and you put them like in the little, I haven't gotten that either.
Yep,
Um,
that's right over here. As a matter of fact, as we're talking, it's right over here in
that's
this
funny.
bag.
And I know Chris was talking about that on his website the other day about, if like a droid factory would fit into the line these days. And I mean, that's an
Oh, absolutely.
acceptable, from what I don't have it again, but from what I've seen on videos, from what I've heard from other people, that's a pretty cool like substitute for not having like a Hasbro one.
Right, right.
Did you think it was fun?
I do. Yeah. I I like the idea of play sets. I don't know that they've ever, popular. They've never been very popular in the past. I don't know, 10 years or so. Um, but I tell you what, speaking of HasLab, you make a HasLab Death Star, I'm all in right away. First day, I'll back that.
Yeah.
But the big spaceships that they're coming out with, the Katana and the Razor Crest, I can't do that. Like, what am I going to do with that thing, right? I would love it. I would absolutely want to get it. I love the idea that they're making it. The Razor Crest was phenomenal from what I saw. I love seeing the progression picks that they had come out with, but I just couldn't. I couldn't pull the trigger on that one.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I did back them both, but I don't know where I'm going to put the Razor Crest. It's just like, for me, like, it's not even an issue of space anymore. It's more of an issue of, well, if I miss out on it, I'm going to miss out on it. And, one day I'm going to regret that. So,
Yeah, right.
but yeah, I hear you though. Death Star. So this is something that comes up now and again. Like, if they did do a Death Star, what would it be like? Would it be like the Tana V4 playset? Would it be something like that? Or would it be more of like the spherical, like, sort of playset in the spirit of the Kenner version? Or would it be something different, some kind of a mix between, scenes and, fold out panels
Well,
and stuff? Like, what do you think would be the ideal HasLab Death Star?
Well, it's a funny thing. Just recently, I shared a Facebook post that was like popped up in my memories, right, from last year. Somebody out there had created a custom 3D printed Death Star that you could. It was inspired by the old Micro Machines version, but it also was designed and developed so that it could include like the Power of the Force 2 Death Star playsets they came out with, and plenty of room to do all kinds of stuff. And that's been getting a lot of like likes on Facebook lately. I was like, I have nothing to do with this. I just thought it was awesome. But I know from interviewing Hasbro employees and design team and brand managers and stuff over the years that Hasbro's design team has made plans, have multiple plans for Death Star playsets over the years. Many versions of them. I was trying to talk to them into like a modular one that you could build, sort of like, put it on a wall and kind of build it as you collect it. And they're like, "Yep,
Mm-hmm.
we've actually thought of that." But the problem is, it's very expensive to tool, to create, to produce, whatever, and the market just doesn't support playsets. And I always laughed, and I'm like, "What about the giant 4-foot bat cave that these guys make over here, or the Ninja Turtle sewer lair, or the Pirates of the Caribbean back when that was popular, the big ship?" I mean, there are big play sets, and they're like, they wouldn't sell in this market.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you see that now. It's like they're really just focusing on the figures, and that's pretty much it. Once in a while, you'll get a creature or a vehicle in either scale, but it's mostly just figures. They're seeing to saving the ships and stuff for the smaller, what are they called? Mission series, little tiny
Mission
ones.
Fleet. Yeah.
Which I personally I have two. I have the Mandalorian and Grogu on the speeder bike when that first came
Uh-huh.
out. That was it. I have no interest in any of the other ones, even though they look really cool and I appreciate that they exist. I have no interest in collecting.
Do you like them?
Well, I like that they're out there.
You
I
like that you can find them in stores?
well, no, because you know what? You're not really finding them in stores because they've been in stores for a year. Once in a while, you'll see a new one. What did I see? It's so hard to tell even because it's like the speeder bike with IG-11 that I see, the Scout Trooper with the speeder bike that I see. That I'm pretty sure the Obi-Wan and Jedi Starfighter and the little the red clone trooper and Chewbacca that have been there for a year. I'm pretty sure that
Mm-hmm.
they're never going away. So I like the idea because that may or may not attract like kids to the line, but I don't think
Mm-hmm.
that's happening. But I don't like the idea because I would rather them focus more on 3 3/4 inch vintage collection figures than anything else.
Right. Yeah. The thing about kids buying this stuff, I mean, like back in like the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, like you would have fads that would come and they would last for years. Like Ghostbusters lasted in the 80s for years. the real Ghostbusters, the cartoon.
Yep.
Ninja Turtles lasted for years. Power Rangers lasted for years. These things lasted for a long time. These days, there's so many things that are constantly coming out. We're bombarded with content on all ends, and attention spans just aren't what they used to be, just for anybody. So, and if Star Wars isn't like front and center like it was during the when Mandalorian is out, then kids are going to gravitate to something else, and it's not even so much toys anymore. And I would know this,
Right.
but it yeah. So yeah, they're not buying Star Wars.
At Hasbro, the focus is clearly on Marvel, which understandably so. There's new TV shows and movies always being made. So I kind of get that. But Star Wars used to be what they call evergreen license. It would always be something. I mean, this is movies that have been out for 40 something years, the original trilogy anyway, and you still see new versions of those characters, and there's still like this. I was showing you earlier this Boba Fett for the vintage collection. I mean, how old is this character? Yet they went back to the drawing board and came out with a really great version of it. So there's still passion there. There's still room for improvement type of thing, but distribution is just non-existent anymore. Which is it makes the hobby not fun. Which
yeah it's not the same. And I know there's reasons that Hasbro does certain things. They're not. I think in recent years they've found that they're not, when it comes to action figures at least, they're not a kids company. They're an adult collector company, and that's Marvel, that's Star Wars, that's G.I. Joe, that's Power Rangers, that's anything that they're doing like in terms of action figures is something that it's gonna appeal to adults. So they're treating it a lot different, and I feel like some of it is deliberate in terms of how boutique they're making their products come across as. It's just that thing of giving you just enough to keep you hooked, right? Just giving you a taste of it and keep you keep coming back for more. And just it creates the competition, it creates the online sales, and that looks good to anybody that's analyzing this information on paper. Oh, look how well all this stuff is selling. Well, we're not making that much of it, so of course it's selling. Right. And what frustrates me is when you look at other companies like Mattel, like McFarlane, like who's making the Batman stuff now, Spin Master. That stuff is distributed really well, but they're not targeting adults; they're targeting kids. So I think when Hasbro made that switch to appeal more specifically to adults, that's kind of when we really started seeing this shift in distribution patterns. Because Mattel's doing a really good job getting their stuff to product. I know there's a whole situation with the pandemic and manufacturing and costs. Mattel's been keeping things going across the board for their various lines without any significant price increases.
I mean, Lego, Funko, their product is constantly on the shelves. New stuff all the time. So it can happen, and there's definitely, I think, a demand out there. But part of the fun, I mean, as a toy collector yourself, part of the fun of this hobby is the hunt. Going to different, I miss Toys R Us big time, but going to Walmart, going to Target, going to GameStop, even even if you wait till clearance, going to Five Below and things like Ross and Marshalls, maybe I mean, it's kind of like you never know what you might find. And after the last series of films that came out, those 5 POA figures were not very popular, but you could find really good clearance prices on everything, which is how I ended up collecting most of that line, because I was just kind of like, I don't know, it's just not doing it for me. But hey, half off, sure.
Yeah, I get that. They were cool in terms of being new characters in like 3 3/4, but that was kind of the extent of it. They're not fun, and I mean, I think even as adults, we tend to lose sight of things that are fun and not fun. But I think everybody knew those just weren't fun. because
Right.
they weren't. They were just
I
so.
think they tried, and the sculpting on some of those, especially like in the Solo line,
Mm,
and even some of the Last Jedi figures, where they're like they really kind of like the sculpts were really good.
yeah.
It just I want the articulation, I want the cool paint apps, you know.
Hmm.
Um,
You mean you don't want a figure that holds its gun out like this all the time?
I mean, I had that when I was a kid. That was kind of cool, you know. But and it's so funny because they do make those in that retro line. But I struggle with that. I'm like, I don't have any interest in those figures because I collected all of them when I was a kid. I mean, I have every single one, with a few variation exceptions, but
Hmm.
I have all of those when I was a kid. Droids and Ewoks, I never. Well, I actually did get all the Ewoks many years ago, but I never got into the droids because I never ever saw the cartoons. So I don't know. I think this came out like when I was hitting puberty and kind of my interest went in other directions, but I never saw them as a kid.
Mm,
But now they're on Disney Plus, so I can check out some of those. And I
yeah,
tried, man. I tried watching droids. It's just so bad.
I haven't tried yet. It's like, I mean, I'm going to try at some point. It's just, that was before my time. So I'm like, I
Yeah,
mean, we've had a lot of Star Wars animation that's been pretty awesome since then. So
I just have you watched the Bad Batch finale?
I haven't watched today's episode.
Okay, then I won't say anything. But have you been watching the Bad Batch?
I
Like,
have been. Mhm.
what is your thoughts on that show?
Uh, I liked the first few episodes. I thought I saw the potential where things could go. I liked seeing the Empire coming into power. I liked some of the cameo appearances by certain characters.
Mhm.
But it hasn't really maintained my attention very well in recent weeks. I've kind of, for me, it's become just more like clockwork lately. It's just like, okay, there's another episode of Bad Batch. All right, let's sit down and watch it. But it's not like, oh, there's another episode of Bad Batch. Let's sit down and watch it. So I don't know. Hope the finale is good because we're getting season 2.
Yes, I think I'm there with you. I've actually posted. I was like, I think this show is very aptly named because there are some episodes that are just like, this is just 100% filler, man. But I remember feeling like that with the Clone Wars when that came out, feeling like that with Rebels when that came out. You know, is kind of like, okay, this is what's happening, and then it just went like all season, and then the finale was boom. We're like, oh yeah,
Mm,
okay. You know, I mean, I did podcast roundtables of almost every episode of a lot of that. I was part of it anyway.
yeah.
But I was thinking about this the other day because, like, Ahsoka in the finale of Clone Wars, right? That last Siege of Mandalore 4 part was like, oh my god, this is like my favorite character. I love this arc. But when Ahsoka first appeared in Clone Wars, everybody hated her.
I remember.
Like she's so bad. Like who is she? This is no good. And then the progression over time. So I think
Yeah.
the Bad Batch over time it will become a fan favorite. Right now I'm struggling because I just can't really. I don't understand what this show is yet.
Yeah. I hear you.
But
Yeah.
I watched it and I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. Visually, it's stunning.
Oh,
You
yeah. Yeah.
know?
No, it looks great.
But story wise, it's sort of like, okay, well, something bound to happen soon.
Something is bound to happen. Sid is bound to get into some sort of trouble. And
Right. And
yeah.
like you said, the cameo appearances have been a lot of fun. Cad Bane was fantastic to see him come back. I'm waiting
Mm-hmm.
for Hondo, who's one of my favorite Clone Wars characters. And
Mm-hmm.
the tie-ins to Rebels was sort of a nice nod. And it's just kind of nice to check in with these characters again. So it's so many years later.
Right. Yeah, that's true. The like okay, so the Rebels cameos I guess they sort of make sense. I feel like in some cases it's been a little gratuitous. Like, I mean, I don't
Mm.
think we needed to see certain things, but I mean, it kind of makes sense. They're trying to tie it in more. Tie both of the series in a little bit more than they have been in the past.
Yeah.
Which nothing wrong with that. It just, I think when they switched the focus to that, it kind of took away from what was going on with the Bad Batch and that story. So it became less of the Bad Batch and more like
Well,
a
if you're talking
prologue
about
to.
the episode with Hera, yeah, they were barely even in that episode.
Yeah, I think it was just for like a little bit right at the end of that first one.
Right, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So But I like the idea that it's there. I do watch it every week,
Mhm.
and it's I don't know. It just went. The finale was just here, so I don't know what's going to happen next for Star Wars for a little while, anyway.
Yeah. So, I mean, it is nice to have something. There's no live action going on right now. Mando is on hiatus. Boba Fett's coming out later in the year. So it is nice to have some Star Wars to look at, during this kind of an off period
I do
before the
wish there
onslaught.
were. I do wish there were toys to collect for Bad Batch. Not that many.
Yeah, I mean, imagine like if they ever made a movie and they made toys for the movie, or they made like a brand new show and there were toys for the show. I mean, I know it's a really novel concept, but
Crazy.
yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see what's going on in the chat. Hey, Mary, thank you for tuning in. Always love seeing you in here. Faroid77, good to see you here as well. He says that he is in, or she is in, or he is in for the Death Star.
Right.
Let's see. Chris says they definitely understand the modularity appeal. They worry about big items being installable. Modularity solves that. And yeah, that's what you were talking about, Dan, with the Death Star. Dan says watching Droids is rough. I love the intro song.
Oh, it's so 80s cheesy, but yeah, it's kind of fun.
Yeah. Chris says episode 15 is awesome. Toys are the way. Hey, welcome. Love seeing all the scum and villainy in the Bad Batch. There's been some cool aliens and world building. I don't need a clone shoot them up every episode. Yeah, that's true. That's true. They have been integrating a little bit more of the aliens. And I was podcasting on Cantina Chatter with one of my contributors there, Dave, and he made a really good point. I made the observation that, hey, we're seeing a lot of aliens in the Bad Batch that are more like original trilogy specific, the kind that we saw pop up in, I don't know if you watched Resistance, but in Resistance, there were a lot of these aliens that were in that show, a lot of the same species we've been seeing in Bad Batch. And he made a good point. He said that, with the Empire coming into power and, checking everybody's scan docs and all that stuff, that it kind of makes sense for certain worlds to be displaced by the Empire and, having to find places to live. And that's why we're seeing more of those species. So it makes sense.
Well, in Star Wars, as a kid, some of my favorite figures were the aliens.
Oh yeah,
absolutely. I mean, the Cantina 4, Bosk was one of my favorite characters as a kid. The figures, he was fun to play with. But I always made up that he was like a mutated X-wing pilot because his outfit was so similar to Luke. I had no clue about any of the factions and fighting pilots or whatever. I was like, he wears sort of an X-wing jumpsuit, so maybe he like crash landed on this planet and mutated into this creature, and now he's making the best that he can. I was a Swamp Thing, Man Thing fan as a kid, so I had I had that kind of idea in mind. Didn't understand that they were all alien races.
Do you remember the early 90s Swamp Thing show that was, I think it was on USA?
I do. Yes. And I just watched, I binged the new one that they have. It's on, well, it was on HBO or something, I think, first, but now it was on the DC app. I don't know, but it's on CW now. So if you go to the CW app, you can watch the whole season. It's edited for TV. You can tell that they're using a lot of F-bombs, but they edited those out. But it's not a bad show, and they canceled it like after the first episode. So they released 10 episodes, and that was it. And I was like, oh, that's too bad.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty good for what it was.
Yeah, for sure. And that was a good toy line too. That Swamp Thing toy line in the early 90s. That was
I have
fun.
one of those figures still to this day. He fit in really well with my superpowers toys. So he has an arm that you can like squeeze his legs and it comes back.
Yeah, the dark green one, the hand that comes out at the wrist. Yeah. I bought them on eBay like 6 years ago, and I still have them all like brand new in the boxes.
Really?
I bought like all the Swamp Things, yeah. And they're cool. The packaging was cool, Kenner. And in the 90s, they moved into that 4.5-inch scale, so they're bigger than Star Wars. But
as a kid, I didn't care. I had Star Wars mixed in with Battlestar Galactica and superpowers and the Marvel Secret Wars. I had them all together in Cantina fights and Hoth battles, and that was the fun about, I mean, again, we were saying this before. That was fun about when I was a kid. We would actually go outside in the backyard in the dirt piles in the grass or wherever, and we would just set up all of our toys and vehicles, and we just have adventures with our figures.
Hmm.
Can't tell you how many X-wings crashed into my friend's pool, and
Yeah,
they would,
I'll
they would
bet.
swim over to the side.
We put my brother and I, in the 90s, Shadows of the Empire line.
Yeah,
Prince Caesar was like the biggest peg warmer like back then. And we had like an extra one. And we were just so sick of seeing that figure on the pegs. So we had an extra one. We strapped it to like a leftover like rocket from like 4th of July or something. And we sent it up into the sky. And when it
nice.
came back down, it was like all charred and burnt up. And you're like, ha ha ha, yes.
Yeah, I love that line. I thought that was so cool that they did a toy line. Well, they did everything. It was a whole multimedia project
Yeah.
that had no movie. It was like books, comic books, video games. There's all kinds of stuff. I
Hmm.
remember many years ago, back when I was on Rebel Scum, I did a whole series of updates of all the collectibles. So I actually tracked down like everything that I could find, the trading cards, the models, everything that I could find, and built a gallery for that, because it was just sort of like this little story that stayed popular over the years. Now it's what, Legends, so it doesn't count. Well, it never really counted. It was just a fun story.
Right.
It
Yeah.
was
It was
like,
always expanded universe.
yeah, the expanded universe was always not canon, but it just sort of like leaked into the canon a little bit sometimes, and they're still doing that now.
Yeah.
Thrawn is a great example. That was totally like not part of the films, obviously, but now he's totally, well, he's not in a film, not in a TV show yet, but
Yes.
yeah, he's back. I love it. I absolutely love it.
He is back. Yeah. Yeah. We'll see who else pops up in live action.
Yeah.
Let's see here. So, Epic King Edward Water Lettuce. Interesting name. My friend keeps trying to get me to watch The Bad Batch. Yeah, check it out. I mean, it's worth checking out at the very least. Watch a few episodes, see what you think.
Yeah, right now there's only 15 episodes, and if you really want the background, go back and watch those episodes of the Clone Wars where they introduce those characters, because those are actually really cool.
Mm, yeah, that last season. Star Wars at 3 a.m. Has anyone heard of the new Star Wars hotel? Yeah, you've heard about this, right, Dan?
I saw a couple of ads pop up, and from what I can tell, in my quickly thumbing through Facebook headlines, it's very expensive.
I think it was like $6,000 for like a family of 3 for like a 2-night stay or something like that. That's
And
what I
what does that
saw.
what does that get you exactly?
Well, the hotel's supposedly like canon. Like it's supposed to be part of like the story, like the story you experience at the hotel. And if he's still in here, Dan from the Jano channel can speak more to this than I can, because he's like the theme parks expert for Star Wars. But yeah, it's supposed to be like a canon story that you go through over the course of a couple of days,
Hmm.
um, and I think they're encouraging you to come in costume and everything, and just to play up the part and really immerse yourself in that experience. I don't know that you can convince a ton of people like to do that, to say, hey, that you're part of the actual story and, look the part, play the part. But I mean, it's an experience for sure.
I mean, that sounds like a lot of fun. Which part of the story are you in? Original trilogy, sequel
Um,
trilogy,
where do you,
prequel
you're in the
trilogy?
timeline of Galaxy's Edge, I believe.
Okay, so that's somewhere after something.
Yeah. So Galaxy's Edge is between The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker.
Okay, yeah. So I have not been able to go to Galaxy's Edge. I would love to at some point. Probably by the time I'm able to go, it'll change. But yeah, from what I remember, it's a lot of First Order and Kylo Ren and Rey and all that stuff that people are desperately trying to forget about. So that's weird.
Yeah. It's, yeah,
But
I think, mhm.
Star Wars is forever, and I absolutely would love to go if I had the means, I had the funds. I would totally go and check that out. I've never been a dress up in costume, um, cosplayer or anything like that, but I appreciate the effort that goes into that because Halloween's my absolute favorite holiday as a kid. So I don't know that I would go dressed in costume necessarily, but I would still like to go and check it out.
Yeah, I'm not a huge costume person either. Yeah, so but it's cool, and I appreciate people that do it and do awesome work at it. But it's I'd rather just if it's simple and it's I can kind of like play it off as just my normal look, or either kind of go either way, then that's one thing. But
You
like
could
to
totally fit
deliberately
into Star Wars, totally, just the way you are.
that weird, yeah, I know.
You're not weird.
A little.
Yeah, but I would like to go do that. Is that at California or Florida or both?
That's in Florida.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Let's see. Dan O says it's between 8 and 9,000. Oh no, between episodes 8 and 9. I was like, wait, no,
okay.
between episode 8 and 9. Yeah, so Last Jedi and
Well,
Rise of
there's a guy.
Skywalker.
He dresses up as an X-wing in that picture. He's an X-wing pilot. So yeah,
Yeah.
you
Oh
totally
yeah,
get
he
into
could
it.
pull that off. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for anybody that doesn't know Dano from the Dano channel, he's like, if you want any information on Galaxy's Edge, stuff at the, Star Wars at the theme parks, he's like the absolute best source for that. So he's got his channel. It's awesome, huge channel. And yeah, he does awesome work with all of that.
Maybe
So
he's a good person to talk to about getting some droids.
I see what you did there.
Yeah, I don't know if they still do that because I think when Galaxy's Edge started up, they moved the Build a Droid concept to the larger scale astromechs that you could put together. I don't have any of those. I have no interest in those. I like the smaller ones before that, and I don't know if they're still doing that though. That's the thing. So it's sort of like the ones that I'm finding on eBay, few and far between, but slowly I'll eventually collect them. I really just want the parts. I don't need like multiples and full bodies. I just want like all the different parts that they have. And there's always more domes than bodies, so that's not really fair.
Yeah, it was cool when Target brought them to the
Yes.
store when they had like it was like eight different figures or something. That was cool. If they did like a second round of those, I'd be cool with that.
I think they will. There's definitely, I think, a demand for it because those things sold out, and then again, those distribution, they came back several times. I remember coming back to the stores. And I'm like, wow, I thought these were long gone, and then there's like the whole display again. I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool that they're keeping this updated. I didn't see it personally, but I did see a report that somebody had found them on clearance for like $250 or something like that, like really cheap. So they're definitely on their way out now. But I haven't seen them recently. But I did get all of them.
Me too. They're cool. I like the interchangeability and being able to just play with them and make your own thing. And then you get bored. Okay, time to change it up. Do something different.
Right.
That's fun. Yeah. And no, cool stuff. Let's see here. So Chris, hey Greg, welcome to the live stream. Chris says, yeah, my parents' shrubs were standing for Endor and they ate so many blasters.
Yes.
Toys are the way. I love Shadows of the Empire stuff. The first figure that I got was Leia Bounty Hunter Disguise, and I figured probably the best Leia at the time. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
At the time, yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Fairlight says, what is your favorite line, vintage or black series, etc.? Interesting. So I think I know what your answer might be, but I'll let you go first, Dan.
Are we talking currently or all time? That would be a question. So currently, yeah, I'm much more of a vintage collector and fan. The Black Series 6-inch, just so we're clear. I like that it exists. I'm not a completist by any means. There are way too many exclusives for that line. But I'm very particular about which characters I get nowadays. So if it's from The Mandalorian, I'm probably going to get it. Otherwise, I'm not interested in 6-inch anymore. And matter of fact, I'm thinking about getting rid of like the bulk of my initial ones that I picked up. Just because what am I going to do with them? They're just sitting in tubs right now. I don't display them. I barely look at them. I did get, I put it in the other room. I did get the Boba Fett, the deluxe one. That looks really cool. And I got Bo-Katan. just a couple weeks ago. She's still in the
Uh-huh.
box. I forgot to even open her. So yeah,
She's cool. Really
yeah,
good figure.
she looks fantastic. I mean, that's what they're doing. I love the photoreal paint. It looks good on 6 inch. It looks, yeah, it's hit or miss on 3 3/4 inch, I think. But they've definitely improved a lot from some of the offerings over the past few years, where the eyes are like, up here.
Yeah.
They're
Hmm.
kind of not quite aligned.
Right.
But
Yeah, that's true.
I'm oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, no, currently, yeah, obviously it's vintage. I mean, I collect both. I don't, I do. But yeah, I mean, vintage is, it's a scale I've been collecting since 96. So that's, I got a lot of it, and, I want to see it, and I always say this, the thing with Black Series is there's a lot of like opportunity, because there's a lot of things they haven't made that they could still make. I
Mhm.
mean, with vintage 3 3/4 inch more specifically, they have covered a lot of ground over the years. Maybe not with the latest content, but they did cover a lot of ground for the sequel, or for the prequels, for the original trilogy,
Mhm.
Clone Wars. If you're into the animated stuff, like Chris is, um, and I mean, they have done a lot. So I see where there's more opportunity with 6 inch to kind of expand into areas that are barely touched, like 6 inch. Think about Cantina characters, Jabba's characters,
Right.
barely anything. Um, but vintage, you get the vehicles, you get the play sets, you get the dioramas. You can really make the scene, and just being able to recreate a little piece of what you love in terms of those movies is something that's really fun to do. And you'll never accomplish that with any scale larger than 3 1/4.
No, I always feel, and I'm really serious and passionate about this, but I always feel that at its heart and soul, Star Wars is a 3 3/4 inch line. And yes, it's been around for 40 something years. Yes, they've done so many versions of Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader and the main characters, but there's lots and lots of characters still to do and improvements still to be made. But that is Star Wars, is 3 3/4 inch, and it has been for so many years for so many fans. When they came out with 6 inch, when they came out with smaller scales, even 8 inch, 12 inch, whenever they come out with these, it seems like that's a limited line, and that's okay, to do that. They've done those before. They've done what was that? Jedi Force was a play school line that was 6 inches ish. Very animated style, a lot of giant accessories that you could launch at everybody and knock things down and things like that. But there was always the 3 3/4 inch line to go along with it. And it feels like in more recent years, um, it's sort of they're doing these other lines at the expense of the 3 3/4 inch line. So a question came up recently. I think it was Jedi Temple Archives had posted, when would Vintage Collection end? Do we feel that this is going to happen? Would be That's it? I'm out type of thing. And I said, I made a comment. I don't comment mostly, but I came out there because I'm passionate about this. And I was like, I feel that it will end at some point. I feel it has to end because right now it's getting stale. And that should never happen. That should never happen to Vintage Collection. It should always be something that we look forward to. It should always be something that as fans, as collectors, we want to see, and we can't wait to get more. But the distribution model, the way things are nowadays, where you order online for like a 10-second window before it sells out, and then they just never replenish it, it's just not fun anymore. I was saying before. So there is lots of opportunities. There are some cool figures coming out. I hope that we see everybody added to this. I will not rest until a Jackson figure is added in 3 3/4 inch. Um, but I just feel that to keep the line fresh, to keep the line exciting for fans, collectors, that maybe it's time we put it on hiatus for a little while and go to something else. But that will not happen until we have another film.
Yeah.
Sorry, long rant or
No, I hear
discussion.
you. My concern would be if they put it on hiatus, that they're not going to bring it back. I think, a lot of people work so hard behind, petitioning and just constantly nagging Hasbro, at conventions, on websites, on videos and everything to bring it back. And finally they did. And my concern is that if they did decide to give it a rest, that could be the end. And I don't
Right.
think anybody really wants to see it go away after all that. Um,
Well, they had Star Wars figures long before Vintage Collection and afterwards. So I mean, they would still continue the style of figures, just a different branding, different packaging. It's just a different name. And you think back to when it 2004 when VOTC came out, there was every year was like a new line look, a new collection.
mhm.
Okay, and then Vintage Collection comes back, and we're like, oh, cool, and it's got that great Kenner graphic and a Kenner style that we all love. If you're a fan of that, which I'm assuming if you're watching this show you are. But do you get what I'm saying? Where I feel like it's getting stagnant, and there's over 200 figures in this line right now, which I love. I think keep it going higher. Don't redo the numbering, but there's still I don't know. I'm kind of I'm losing my train of thought a little
Yeah, I
bit.
mean, I definitely think they're not hitting all the opportunities that are there
Yeah,
right now. I think that they could be doing so much more. I don't know what their plans are like for a year out from now, 6 months from now, but I think there are a lot of things they could be doing to make more money. And I mean, if you're a business, obviously that's what you want, right? So I think they are missing a lot of opportunities to do certain things that would probably do pretty well for them. Um, but I don't know. I kind of feel like going back to what we were saying earlier about how Hasbro's been treating action figures as more of like a boutique collector
mhm,
oriented thing. I don't think we're going to go back to those years where you had your original trilogy collections, your saga collections, your 30th anniversaries. I mean, because that's when they were putting out tons and tons of figures every year with
right.
brand new sculpts, brand new tooling. And unfortunately, I just don't think we're there anymore. Maybe we will be in 5 to 10 years. Who knows? But until that happens, I don't think I think it'd be a huge risk for them to pull vintage without. I mean, it's just like anything they do. Like for them, I think they finally realized that that's what people that are buying through 3/4 inch. And it doesn't matter, what it's called. I think the vintage collection has become synonymous with that collector quality, super articulated,
Mm-hmm.
photoreal, detailed, and then it has the packaging. If you move to something that's more like Power of the Jedi or something, I mean, is that going to have the same appeal to the people
Right.
that have been buying these for all this time? So yeah, I think it'd be a mistake for them to do that, and I don't think the line would come back, and I think it just wouldn't be good overall. The scale would probably be gone.
So they would continue Vintage Collection basically forever, and then
That
have 6-inch figures kind of changing their line look every few years, and whatever comes out for movies. If they still promote movies anymore, I don't know. It's kind of tough to tell. Rise of Skywalker came out and there was no toy line for it. It's so bizarre to me, still to this day. Um, but I don't know. I just love to see it, and I do like. Even though I'm not necessarily buying all of them because I probably have most of them already, but I do like the idea of doing the repacks with the what are they calling it? Complete the 98 or whatever, right? I do love that. I wish that they had been doing that all along, and I like the idea behind it. And there's so many more great figures that they could bring out now in vintage from legacy collection, from 30th anniversary collection. I mean, the next time we
yeah,
get together to talk about that, there's so many ideas I have.
there are a lot, and I know it's come up before too about the tooling. Like, what do they have? I know there's rumors that a lot of stuff from that era is like gone. Um, I don't know if that's true. Um, if so, then maybe that's why we're not seeing a lot of those repacks. But yeah, there's a lot of things that'd be cool to see come back on vintage cards. And I think the tooling that they did previously, things like Lisa Absorlin, just a lot of this aliens, the Ugnaughts, things like that would be great on vintage packaging. Just bring them back, update the paint. I think those would do just fine. But if
I
they're
want to see
gone,
I want to see Ifant Mon brought back
oh
on vintage
man,
collection because I want to see just how they would do it. How would you get Ifat Mon on a vintage collection card back today?
It'd have to be like a deluxe special thing. Yeah, I let's see. Chris says, I heard somewhat authoritatively when they move off the vintage collection, sales literally have. If 3 3/4 inch lost half its sales right now, it might go away forever.
Oh,
And during that same conversation, it was mentioned that it's why it's the most mimic packaging style ever.
that is true. That is true. There are a lot of pretenders out there. Even within Hasbro, that Marvel line is sort of a vintage.
Yeah,
You
it
know,
is.
I don't like it. I don't like that particular line. Not that we're talking Marvel, but I don't like that particular line. But I do like the packaging. It's kind of fun, you know. And it's like, why do I like this so much? Oh, right, because it's the same packaging as Star Wars, same design.
Transformers too.
Oh yeah. Oh yes, I have seen those.
Hang on,
You know,
Dan. I got a
I'm not familiar
refill.
with it. Okay, I saw a GI Joe figure that was like about a ½ inch tall on this giant card. I'm like, what is this? It's like a micro GI Joe.
Yeah.
I've been out of touch too long, I guess. Like, this is so weird. What is this thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's true. Like with reaction and, going back to when did reaction start? Like a decade ago, I think almost.
Yeah.
That was just like ripping off, the Star Wars look. I mean, and that's become such a thing. Like you go to Target lately, it's been like the Universal monsters. I have a friend in here, Greg, that collects those. And they're like $18. They're doing it with Ninja Turtles too. They're like $18 for a 5 POA figure on a flimsy card. It's like, but that's what people want. They want the nostalgia. They want the not necessarily when it comes to Star Wars do they want like the 5 POA, but like just seeing that shape, that format with the character image and the name, the little bubble with the itty bitty figure. I mean, there's just something about that I guess has just become part of pop culture over the years. It's just like something that you can't really replace.
And it's such a versatile design. You think back to like the Revenge of the Sith toy line. That was like really difficult to collect and store if you were a carded collector. The 30th anniversary line with the angles and the sharp, edges. That was. I have a friend who is a carded completist. I don't know if he still is, but he's like, it is so hard to find like a good quality card that's not all bent to crap. And I wonder how he's doing now, considering some of the horror stories I've seen online of ordering stuff through Walmart.
Good old Walmart.
I've gotten lucky, actually. I've gotten lucky with Walmart. The things that I've ordered have come back very well packed. So they must say, hey, don't mess with this guy.
Yeah, they know who you are. They're not going to send you something mingled up. It's not like it's me or something, or they would do that.
No, I'm
kidding. Yeah, that Revenge of the Sith line, I still say that was the best Star Wars film toy line like ever made.
Yeah. It was very robust. A lot of cool stuff added to it. Action features, accessories, and vehicles, play sets, creatures, speeder bikes galore, tons and tons of clones. I mean, it just went on and on and on. And it carried over for the next few years into some of the other toy lines as well.
Yeah, they didn't stop it when the line ended late that year. They continued it with waves in the Saga collection, the 30th anniversary collection. But yeah, I like that the focus was just on Revenge of the Sith. It was just on that film, but they built it out so well. By this point, they had already tried the action features with the Saga line. They had tried, different things with the Phantom Menace line. And I think by now they were like, okay, so action figures that maybe some have action features, but they're integrated into the sculpt where you don't have these weird buttons or these magnets or these gimmicks that are Mace Windu on a stick. The Happy Meal R2D2, like that, goes up and down the zip line, like things like that. And yeah, and then they had repaints, right? Some of the clones they repainted a couple of times. And even I think the Nemodian Warrior, remember that one? They repainted that one, and they did some holographic figures. And yeah, they really fleshed it out. And you had the vehicles, you had deluxe, if you were a 12-inch collector, there was 12-inch. Unleashed, they were doing Unleashed stuff at that time. So, I mean, there was a lot to go around. And like you said, none of it took away from 3 3/4. That was still like the focus. These other things were just like in addition to.
I mean, you had your 3 3/4 inch line. You had the Unleashed line, both big and small. You had Galactic Heroes, which I totally embraced that line. I don't know why, but I found that to be such a fun expression in Star Wars, and just the different characters they came out with was so much fun for me anyway, collecting them.
Yeah.
And they were not expensive, so it was easy to keep up with.
$5 a figure back then. Remember that?
Yeah, oh, I do. And when we got into things like 30th anniversary collection and legacy collection, the characters they made were themed waves, like you were hinting at before. So that was kind of fun because you got to revisit like the entire saga, including some expanded universe stuff, which those figures are still like super, super hard to come by. I see some prices online. I'm like, oh my God, really? But
That's what we're going to see next. Right now, it's the vintage collection from the last and legacy collection. I think for a few years now, a lot of legacy items have been really expensive. But I think we're going to start to see that creep back in, go backwards a little more and more. Saga,
right.
Revenge of the Sith. I don't know. I could be wrong. I just have a
But
feeling
some
that.
of those figures, even now, they've changed a lot of the sculpting aesthetics and stuff like that, and the articulation and stuff has gotten so much better. Some of those figures still hold up and fit in perfectly well with today's line.
Yeah.
And I'd love to see some of those brought back. And it's such an easy thing. All you gotta do is print up a new card.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you said before, like, they lost the tooling for a lot of these.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a rumor that comes up quite a bit, is that a lot of the stuff from like legacy collection era is lost or misplaced, or yeah.
Wow.
I don't know if that's true, but
That's interesting because they're and if you don't know the story, we'll talk about it another time. But there was a point where I was working with Hasbro as a consultant, I suppose, and we had come up with different figures and ideas for the Saga Legends line as it became known. This is back in 2007, and one of the figures that won the polls that I was running was the pit droids. Now, those pit droids were available in 1999 only overseas, so fans wanted those brought back. Well, Hasbro went into their vaults, into their archives, and they couldn't find the tooling to create those again. So they resculpted them and they remade them specifically for Saga Legends. And I only know this because I talked with them all the time back then. And I was like, well, that's cool that you have like a whole archive of like metal blocks sitting somewhere. But to hear that they've lost all those, that's sad.
yeah, I don't know if it's true, but
Yeah.
that keeps popping up.
Interesting.
So
Well, maybe they do a lot of stuff digitally nowadays. Maybe it's changed the game. I'm not really sure how that still happens.
yeah. So Dan, you've contributed a lot to this line, to the Star Wars action figure line over the last couple of decades. And for anyone here that maybe just doesn't know, can you go into a little bit of your background? You kind of alluded to teaming up with Hasbro on some of these things in 2007, 2008, that time frame.
Yeah.
Can you expand a little bit on what you've done? You also mentioned Rebel Scum earlier, just for anybody that might not know, and I'm sure most people do, but in case they don't, what you've done with the Star Wars line over the years.
So, okay, wow. Yes, back in the day, I suppose. But I used to be part of Rebel Scum, and if you were a fan of the website from, I don't know, 1999 to 2012, you probably saw my name once or twice. As the person who did a lot of reporting and did a lot of archiving and documentation of all the action figure line, which so many people do nowadays and so much better than I ever did. So I'm not trying to, toot my own horn or anything, but I did do that. Well, that became a thing. The Hasbro people at the time, they would go to the website to do their research to find out, because I had documented a lot of different things, and they're like, oh, this is a good resource. Anyway, I was contacted by Hasbro for this upcoming greatest hits line, if you will. Remember, Revenge of the Sith came out. It was sort of like Revenge of the Sith, but it was in the Saga collection. right?
Yeah, heroes and villains and
Yes.
greatest battles. Yeah.
So various repacks that they rebranded to kind of come out and fill in the gaps between action figure lines. Because at the time, ideally, you would have a new wave of figures every 6 to 8 weeks,
Hmm.
and that was the schedule that they tried to keep going. So at any rate, um, they wanted to come back and come up with a repack line, which became known as Saga Legends, which that name has been stolen a few times over the years since, but at the time. So I did a very, very large fan-based poll of every figure up to then, um, in the forums, and then on through the website, and we had lots of polling. We had a lot of issues, but there was a lot of polling amongst the collectors to determine who were the top 10, top whatever, 16. I had a March Madness bracket style tournament where people could actually vote with this figure against that figure, and then he moves ahead, and who's the next winner. And anyway, the 1998 Dark Trooper figure was selected as the fans' favorite. Okay, overall fans' choice winner. That was the figure that was chosen. Right or wrong, that's what the poll said. So
Hmm.
that figure was released, which was great. I have a in the other room. I have it in the clamshell. One of the few figures I have not opened. I just wanted to keep that one up there. At any rate, as a result of that, they came up with probably, I think, the top 12, top 16 figures from the line, from the poll, actually
Hmm.
were included in the line, along with some other ones that they had already had selected. But I asked the 501st Clone Trooper, if you remember, back in 2005, was released on a not so great articulated body. And I argued that at San Diego Comic Con a year prior, they had actually shown a super articulated at the time. It was a 2003 sculpt, but it was a 2003 super articulated Clone Trooper body.
Uh-huh.
But that's not what we got.
It was the ATT tank gunner, right?
Yes, with the
Oh
removable
my
helmet.
god, with the elbows. Yeah.
Yeah, and the swivel elbows, and yeah, it was wonky. So I argued that we could have that, and they agreed. So that figure was changed in production. So there's actually they had both versions come out, but that figure exists. Well, because I argued for it. So that was kind of cool. And they have since changed that clone mold. So now in vintage collection, they've come up with a slimmer body with a removable
The
helmet.
skinny jeans clone trooper.
Yeah, I don't like that one as much, but whatever. It doesn't matter. They've done like so many versions of clone troopers on various bodies over the years. So there's something out there for everybody. When that got done, there was an opportunity in the 30th anniversary line where they had a wave of figures for The Force Unleashed. Okay. And the game got delayed.
Hmm.
So they pulled those 7 figures out of the line to put them back in later. And they needed to come up with 7 more figures to, basically come up with a repaint wave. And they said, well, we'd like your input into this. So what would be good? And this was Easter weekend, 2007. And we went back and forth. I was at my parents' house on my laptop. I'm typing up, okay, what about this? And what about this? And the caveat was we had to use existing tooling, so it only could be repaints or slight changes. And it couldn't be any figure or character that they already had plans for. So I suggested a new Ben Kenobi because at the time we didn't have very many Ben Kenobis. And they said, yeah, we can't do Ben Kenobi. I'm like, really? Why not? And they're like, well, we just can't do him. I'm like, oh, you got a new one coming out. Oh, yeah, well, we can't talk about that. So there were numerous figures that were suggested, and they had come back with some, and blah, blah, blah. I went back and forth for a little while. And not all of them got made. We selected on 7. So it was a holographic Darth Vader, the Naboo guard in the yellow, the red. I can't remember which one. I think it was the red. The yellow one was first made, and the red one came in that wave. R2B1, which was a fan request for many years because that was hard to find back in the day, and a couple other ones. But I actually, if you don't know, many years ago, I was into customizing quite a bit, and I kit bash. I made Hasbro kit bash a figure, and that was the Rebel Vanguard Trooper, because that was like right out of a video game. And he said, you have all the parts to this if you just rearrange the Endor Trooper with the Rebel Fleet Trooper and this vest and da da da. And they did it, which was kind of fun. And the one thing that was interesting is they wanted to do something with the Greedo body.
Uh-huh.
They wanted to bring Greedo in, well, maybe not Greedo itself, but another Rhodian. And they go, the problem is we look through, A New Hope, Return of the Jedi, and they all wear the same clothes, right? All the Greedos are basically dressed the same. So we can't do Greedo. We already did Greedo. I'm like, okay. So I thought it'd be kind of cool if you could take Greedo's head and put it on a Jedi body, because that was a fan character that I had come up with many years prior, back in like 2000, I think. I wrote up a fan fiction story. So that was kind of like my little way to kind of make that official. But you know what? All of the Jedi bodies have little tiny pegs, and the Greedo head was too big to fit on them. So that didn't work. But we found there was a Rhodian in the Phantom Menace, like, one of these background dudes walking around. And on StarWars.com, someone had written a fan fiction story. I guess there was like, you come up with the story contest on StarWars.com. And that became known as a character named Pax Bonkik. So that figure got made, which was kind of fun. Same body, different vest. There you go. It's a new one. And I saw that at Celebration, I think, in LA for the first time. The paint apps, the prototype. I'm like, oh my god, this is beautiful. This is like really, really well painted. I didn't expect like this much detail on it. Anyway, those 7 figures were added to the line. And wouldn't you know it, a couple years later in Legacy Collection, they did the same thing with a repaint wave, and a couple other figures that I suggested got added to that as well. So that was kind of fun.
Nice.
Anyway, then the last thing that I really contributed to was the mail away Qui-Gon Jinn with the Eopie. If you remember that from, oh god, I want to say it's Legacy Collection, but it was a 1999 exclusive and a completely different figure, but it was only overseas. So if you wanted to get an Eopie creature, and who doesn't, the only way to do that was to track that down somehow. So it became a mail away figure that you could send away for instead. I remember, I think it was collection, but it was and it had a Qui-Gon figure, which was but anyway, I mean, there have been many other things that I've I've interviewed the brand team many times over the years, but then once I went into semi-retirement, I don't have any idea. Everybody that I knew back then is gone. So
right,
what's happening now with the line, I couldn't tell you who anybody is anymore. Anyway,
yeah,
sorry,
yeah, it's changed. No, good answer. And yeah, no, definitely love hearing the story. It's always fascinating. No matter how many times you told me the story, I I find it fascinating very, very much. But
well,
I'm sure everybody else
as we got to talk and stuff, like at different conventions, thank you. I haven't been on the site for almost 10 years now, but it's still I kind of did in a way. I was part of Steve Sansweet's book. That was the other thing too. Right before I left Rebel Scum, Steve contacted me to have some input into this book that they were doing, which was a loose figure ultimate guide to every Star Wars figure at the time, like every Star Wars figure. And we took a lot of pictures. We wrote a lot of descriptions for everything, a lot of arguments over what is a figure, what isn't a figure. Is Jabba the Hutt a character, or is he not a character? Is he a creature? What is he? Does the little pilot droid that comes with Chancellor Valorum, does that count as its own thing? Because how come he does and the mouse droid doesn't? Or what, so lots of back and forth over that. And we came up with a master list, and I went and photographed just about every single figure that I had or what we needed, and there's lots and lots of pictures of mine in there, which is really fun. But then when that book finally came out, mean, this is the problem with publishing, is that it was already outdated because so many other figures were announced that were not going to be in the book. But we had fun, and it was an honor to be asked by Steve to be part of his project. And Steve, myself, and Newman, and Paul Harrison, who I brought in because he had a lot of knowledge, and he and I were buddies. And in fact, if you look at the two of us together, some people might say we're brothers, just from another mother. And we had a lot of fun with that project. And now there's lots of other resources and books and everything else and websites that are out there to kind of do what I used to do, but way better nowadays. I was never a database guy, so I just kind of like photographed everything and wrote the story.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, that's what I've done.
Yeah, a lot of stuff. I mean, you're as far as like people that have managed fan sites and have had like a hand in like actually like interacting with like influencing Hasbro's decisions like on a major level, thinking back to like Saga Legends and stuff like that. I mean, I think you've done more basically than anyone else has. So I mean, it's awesome, and it's a great story. And I think Chris is right. I think you should write like a dedicated book to include all these stories in, because it would be a New York Times bestseller probably.
Oh, well, thank you.
We'd make it do that.
Right. And now I still, I mean, I'm in my heart, I'm still that 9-year-old kid who saw Star Wars for the first time on the big screen. It was totally blown away, and just like, okay, wow, this is awesome. What happens next? What's the next story? Oh my God, there's toys. Oh my God, there's comic books. Oh my God, there's trading cards. There's a novel. Oh, this is great. I absorbed everything that I could, because I was just so in love with it, really.
Yeah.
And that hasn't died. It has changed quite a bit, because then my hobby became my job for a while, and then went back to being my hobby, and then kind of became like something that I used to do, and now I just sort of peripherally am involved. But there's still the passion behind Star. I still watch. I have all the Blu-rays and everything. I still watch it from time to time. You mentioned Resistance before. That's not my Star Wars. That was like for little kids, and I get that. But I watched both seasons. Didn't really care for it as much as like Rebels. But again, I didn't like Rebels, and then all of a sudden became like one of my favorite shows. I didn't like Clone Wars all that much, but then it became one of my favorite shows.
Yeah.
So Bad Batch, it's not my favorite, but I think it will be by the time it ends.
Yeah, it could surprise us. I mean, season 2, plenty of opportunity for more to happen. And yeah, we'll see. And if nothing else, like I said, at the end of the day, it's nice to have more Star Wars, when there's not a live action show going on, to have something to occupy that time. So
there's actually a lot more pressure on the licensees, but we're talking Hasbro specifically mostly. There's a lot more pressure on them to come out with product usually when there's a film, right? So there's more budget, there's more characters, there's more newness. So they usually try to capitalize on this and want to create as many different possibilities. Basically, throw everything out there and see what sticks with the fans. See what they really want. And I think what happened in the sequel trilogy is that nothing was really capturing people the same way as the original trilogy, or even the prequel trilogy did, or even the Clone Wars did. And I don't know exactly why that is, because I really like The Force Awakens, and I like what they did with The Last Jedi, although it's not my favorite film. And then it just all to me, it all fell apart with Rise of Skywalker. I don't even know what that was. But they did nothing for it in toys, which is so weird.
Yeah. I mean,
no, I'm not a hater. I did like this.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I feel like those films feel small. Like Lucas really opens it up with the prequels. There's all these other planets. Some of them are like the environments are unlike anything you'd find on Earth. Some of them are, but you have things like Felucia, you have things like Coruscant. He really expanded on it. When you go to the sequels, the planets are like more of the same deserts. Okay, forest, tundra. It's like more of that same thing from the OT, which the OT was, you saw that in the OT, but it made sense because that was just kind of like their first time like doing Star Wars, and you had all the other things in there to make it different from Earth.
Right.
But with the sequels, after you come off the prequels, the Clone Wars and all that, it just feels a lot smaller, more intimate. And I feel like that was part of the problem in terms of toys. And when you do that, like, you don't really expand. There weren't huge expansions in there for like new aliens and creatures and crazy new vehicles, because it was mostly repeats of TIE fighters and X-wings and all that
Right.
stuff. So I kind of feel like, had we had those new designs, had we had the new characters, the weird stuff that you have in, like, there's a lot of weird stuff in Star Wars, and that's always my favorite stuff,
Yeah.
is the weird stuff. The cantinas, the Jabba's palace stuff, the prequels, like the pod racers. The Clone Wars has a lot of weird stuff, and you just don't really have that to the same extent in some of the more recent films. And I feel like that, in terms of character design, in terms of offering something fresh and new, it doesn't really do that for the toys. And I think that's where a lot of the problems were.
Right. Well, I also feel that the when Disney took it over and coming out with a movie every single year was way too aggressive and way too much. Because if you think back to the original trilogy, the prequel trilogy, you had 3 years in between films, so you just got to live and breathe with the collecting,
Yes, yeah.
and you got to rewatch it and revisit it and kind of like fall in love with the film again. And then there's new toy lines coming out. It's like, oh my god, they're doing this character. Okay, they're making that character. I remember that guy, And this one, it's sort of like, well, we can't really do any of those characters because we got to prepare for the next movie coming out next
Mhm.
year. So I think it was too quick, too much, too fast, and the design team changed to let's just say kid focused, or what they thought kids would get, and I don't think it worked. And if they do another, I mean, they will, but if they do another Star Wars film, I hope they give a little time in between, um, coming out with more and more and more and more and more, because you want to have that live and breathe with your fandom,
Mhm.
and you just don't have it nowadays. And I know there's like a short attention span with people nowadays that they just don't pay attention to a lot of stuff anymore. Um, but with Star Wars, I think there's always that opportunity to go back and rewatch it and see something new and different. I mean, I watched it as a
Yeah.
kid growing up. I watched it again with my kids growing up. Now I'm going to have an opportunity with my grandson when he gets older, so I'm looking forward to that. Um, but I think it was just too much, too fast, and it suffered.
Right. Yeah, they definitely were eager to get those movies out. I remember even The Force Awakens got pushed back 6 months. It was supposed to be out earlier.
Right.
So I mean, the day that they announced the acquisition of Lucasfilm, they announced those three films.
Oh, I
So
remember.
yeah, yeah. So they didn't, there was that like need to do that, and which is fine. But you know, I mean, maybe their hindsight is different now. Maybe they would have done things different. But maybe if you started with something like Mando, and then kind of just expanded, just here and there with things like between the movies or more animated stuff, maybe you could have built up to something that would be more, across all Star Wars media when you get to those films.
Right. I
But
think that would be really fun if they did something like, okay, you've got the TV show, right? Now you got Disney Plus, which nobody really saw that coming. Okay, back then, right? Now we know it's sort of like everybody kind of gets on board with it. But when Mandalorian came out, I mean, did you really know what to expect of this show? It was all wrapped in secrecy, which made it fun, right? What is this show about? I mean, it's Boba Fett and eventually Yoda. Those two characters don't go together.
no.
No, they don't go together, but they did, and it worked so well. And the format of coming out every week gave you something to like most shows. Like if you think of Netflix, they like, I'm thinking Daredevil, Jessica Jones, the Defenders type stuff. They released everything. You binge watch it over a weekend, and then you kind of don't think about it anymore. I like the idea of coming out every week because you get to live and breathe with it. Again, you get to experience it. You get to
Mhm.
rewatch it, and that's, I think, the thing with Mandalorian. I mean, when well, we didn't know his name at the time, but when Baby Yoda showed up, Grogu showed up the first time, everyone's head exploded.
Yeah.
What? What? Like, what? Like, we know this character. Well, we don't know the character, but we know this alien species for sure. Did Yoda and Yaddle have a secret thing back in the day, or what? I mean, whatever happened to Yaddle? Does anybody even remember Yaddle? I don't even know. But it seems like that's more what Star Wars should be and needs to be, coming out at a slower pace where it kind of builds the world, it builds the experience.
Mm.
And now I think you're starting to see that with the multiple shows when eventually we come out, with the Book of Boba Fett and Ahsoka Tano and even like Andor and Lando and whatever. Are they still doing the Republic pilot one, or did that get canned? You know what I'm talking about? The one that was going to have Gina Carano's character?
The Rangers of the New Republic. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
we
haven't
haven't
heard
heard
any.
anything.
We haven't heard anything.
At any rate, my point is having them all interconnect is building the world. Now have them all go into a feature film, right, on a big screen. So think about like the original Marvel films when they came out with Iron Man, Hulk, Thor, Captain America. How do these characters work together? They're so completely different. And then Avengers came out, and it just like this is cool. And Star Wars, not saying you follow that model, but it seems like they're kind of building that slowly over time. And I love it. I love being a part of it. I love watching it. I love collecting the toys from it. But I think that's how Star Wars should be, and not just boom, 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 get them out as quickly as possible so we can recover that $4 billion.
Right. Yeah. 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 No, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mandalorian is cool.
Yes.
They said my kids and I wish everything had more toys to buy when the films and shows release. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I still say, Hasbro made a mistake not having some Bad Batch like main characters out when that show launched. I mean, at least a couple.
One thing. But here's a funny side note to that. And probably why they don't do that. Every time you come out with a toy line to time it to the film's release or the TV show's release, somewhere inevitably something gets spoiled. There's always leaks. There's always something that comes out. Anakin Skywalker in 2002 having a removable magnet where his arm falls off.
Yes.
He loses his arm in the film. It's not even out for 2 months.
Well, I remember on the Tonight Show, like Jay Leno had Hayden Christensen, and he was like, "Oh, why does it do this?" And, like before the movie came out, he banged on the desk and the arm came off, and Hayden was just like, "Oh, that's weird." Like,
so I kind of get why they didn't do that. And if you think about it, if they had Mandalorian toys available as the show debuted, we totally would have known about Grogu. Totally would have known about him before he even showed up on screen. So I actually appreciate that they didn't have anything planned. And I was on a different show when this all was going on, and Corey and I argued about it. He's like, "Oh man, they got to have toys." I'm like, "No, man, they can't, because they don't want anybody to know about this. This is such a closely guarded secret right now." And I appreciate the fact that they've done this. You think back to the Clone Wars, we saw Boba Fett or Jango Fett's Slave One. Why are they making a toy of the Slave One? Oh, I guess they're going to be in the show. Probably didn't want to know that.
Why did Cad Bane come out in Black Series like a year before he came out in Bad Batch?
Right. Oh, I still got to get that figure. You know what? I would buy that figure.
It's a cool figure. It really is. Yeah. It's really cool. I have never seen it at retail once. I got mine online.
No, me neither. Well, there's nothing at retail really anymore, man. Sorry, I keep saying man. I don't mean to do that. You see nothing but empty pegs all the time. I walk into Target just in the off chance there might be something, and there's nothing. But it's not just Star Wars. It's like the whole toy aisle in that section is just empty. At least in mine, it goes like wrestling.
No, they're all
empty. Jurassic World, Jurassic Park. You're more familiar with that than I am, but there's lots of them. Frankly, they all look cool. And there's a couple of
and they're inexpensive.
Yeah. But there's nothing Star Wars. You go the next aisle where they have Marvel stuff, and it's all Shang-Chi, and everyone's like, "Well, what is this?" I don't even know what movie this
I
is.
know those came out like in May, and the movie doesn't even come out till like October. So it's like I don't know how that happened.
Yeah, that's a weird release schedule, but everything is
Yeah,
weird nowadays.
yeah, that's true. The movie got pushed probably. So Chris says if Dan didn't document the early 90s, it was happening. So much of that information would have been lost.
Well,
Yeah.
I know Chris has told me this before, and I appreciate that. I really do. It's I'm a big nerd sitting in my basement, my own basement. Thank you very much. Playing with toys and photographing them, and at the time, doing all that. And even if I'm the only person who ever read it, at least it was all there. And I've heard from Chris and other people many times over the years that they appreciated a lot of the work that I've done, and it's heartwarming. It really is. And I miss it. I do.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can't remember when I started like following, your archives on there.
But
2001,
even part of the fun was,
2002.
yeah. Well, I was part of another website that was called collectstarwars.com, and the owner of that site called me New Year's Eve, 2001, calls me up and says, "Oh, we're merging with Rebel Scum tomorrow." I'm like, "I'm sorry, what?" So we all became one big happy family, and then Mike left, and then started Galactic Hunter,
Mm-hmm.
and invited me to come with him. And I said, "Well, I kind of like where I am because I had two goals when I joined Rebel Scum officially. I wanted to build the photo archive, and I wanted to create a comic book at the time, every comic book cover gallery, because I collected all these as a kid and even as an adult, and I wanted to have all of them available. So I scanned all my comics, and I built the gallery, and I started publishing it on the site. And so many people from so many countries would send in their scans of their versions. So I had like Turkish versions and Spanish versions and French versions. And I was like, oh, well, I don't have any of these. This is pretty cool. So it became a lot more than what I initially started. With the photo archive, I mean, that had existed on both sites, but now I was merging the two. And I went back to one of my favorite resources, which in the 80s was the Marvel handbook, the official guide to the Marvel Universe handbook. And it showed like every single character with a little bio and a little description. And I used that same kind of format for how
Mm-hmm.
I would do it. And then I just included more stuff. And as I opened the toy, I'm like, well, this is good information to have. This is cool. Hey, you know what? I'm going to take a picture of the bubble because there's a little blaster hidden underneath the thing that the cardboard insert hides. If you throw this away, you're going to lose your blaster.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like stupid things like that I just kind of did, and then that just carried it through. Now I don't know what they're doing, so I don't check it out anymore. So, but I did it for the time. I don't do it anymore, and I still collect. I got bins and plastic bags full of figures right here to my left, which probably looks different to you, but
Yeah, probably looks a little different. Action Figure Expert says, hey, Dan, just wanted to say I really appreciated your archives from those past years. Really helped with collecting. I used to be a moderator on Rebel Scum.
cool. Thank you. Thank you. And I'm glad that helped you, and it still helps people to this day. That's really why I did it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, plus to help me, and you know, I would like to see more toys made.
Yeah.
Never really go. The toy line itself should never really go away. Whether they change the brand or change the graphics or whatever, like we were talking about with Vintage Collection before. I do like the idea that it continues on that card back because that is iconic and that is the nostalgia factor that doesn't really exist with other lines. So that's kind of cool. Somebody asked earlier, like, what was your favorite toy line? And I said, now or all time. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I don't know, an hour or so ago. All time, just to get back to that one, I loved the Saga collection because it still had that vintage design to it, but it had a background where that
Mm-hmm.
character appeared. And apparently, if my history is correct, and it may not be, that was one of the original concepts for Power of the Force 2.
Hmm.
They wanted to use that. That was one of the ideas that they had come up with for a line, but that got nixed because it was too similar to the Kenner days.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, I might be wrong, but I Adam Paulus probably would double check me on that one. But I do remember hearing that at one point, and then they brought it back, and it was oh wait, maybe that was original trilogy collection. Well, both. Yeah, it was original.
Both had the background, yeah.
Original trilogy collection was the one. I'm sorry, I misspoke, but I like anyway. I like the background cards rather than the character cards, because those character cards sometimes get dented and bent, which is unfortunate. Anyway, yeah, I misspoke. Sorry about that. Original trilogy collection with the background underneath, with the same star back and everything else like that. That was something special, and that was a line that was put together very last minute, believe it or not.
Yeah, I remember that. That was because of the Blu-ray or the DVD release, right? That was coming out that year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they wanted to do something different to make it seem fresher or whatever. But that was actually my first toy fair that I attended was in 2004, and I walk around the corner, and it was very different than toy fair is nowadays. But I walked around the corner of this big hotel lobby area. It was like up on the 10th floor or whatever, and they had a very small display. I was like, "This is toy fair." They had a Millennium Falcon, which wasn't even the one that we got. They had a weird mock-up of a 12-inch Luke Skywalker, and a handful of figures that were released the year before. I'm like, what? It was so bizarre. But if you look back at that line, a lot of those figures were either repaints or repacks from previous ones, with a couple of new sculpted figures thrown in, especially towards the end.
Mm-hmm.
But I love that line, because you started to see this in 2001, but you started to see more attention paid to scale of the figures. You started to see more articulation added, better paint apps. I mean,
yeah.
Power of the Force 2 had a Rebel Fleet Trooper that's almost as tall as Chewbacca, which is way too big. And everybody was like He-Man proportions. So that was a strange line.
It was.
They started really paying more attention to that, and you could totally tell. And that carries over to this day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think you're right. That original trilogy collection line was like the perfect combination of old and new, because the format of the packaging itself was based on Saga, right? Which is a more modern version of the packaging, bigger bubble. You put more accessories in there. The shape of the card is different.
Yeah.
But then they incorporated that vintage look with that logo, the star background, and the character background where you had, the environment, like you were saying. And it worked out so well that they basically reused that concept for the Saga collection in 2006. And
yeah.
I think it worked really well. Like, you look at some of those Cantina aliens they did back for Saga collection, like Hammerhead, or gosh, there were a bunch of them during that era.
No, Dejas Per was in 2002
or two, I think. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I love the Cantina aliens, and I always say in Star Wars, the aliens, the uglier the better, right? Because they're just so cool. But there was something about the even the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy, the aliens in those films felt more Star Wars than the sequel trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
To me, sequel trilogy aliens look more like Doctor Who or Stargate aliens, not Star Wars. I don't know. It's a weird thing. I can't quite put my finger on it, but it just didn't feel right.
Right. Yeah. Like
Maz Kanata's palace, and they never did anything with any of those characters. It was like, oh my God, there's so many cool characters in this film, but nothing was ever done.
Yeah. I'm not sure what happened there. We got a couple, right? There was like Sidon Nathano and that other his partner or whatever it was. But they never really went beyond that. There were things like Constable Zuvio, which the story of Constable Zuvio, but
Such an unsung hero. I'm sure there's a great Constable Zuvio Disney Plus series in the works somewhere, some alternate universe.
Redemption, yeah.
Remember when
Yes.
everybody thought that that was Boba Fett?
Yes, that was weird.
Because of the deco, the color scheme is like, oh my god, this could be Boba Fett. I'm like, are you on crack?
Yeah, well, those people maybe weren't so much on crack because I'm sure you saw in Rise of Skywalker how Dengar was in it, or Dengar was in that movie.
No.
So
What?
it was, yeah. So the visual dictionary for the Rise of Skywalker. I'm gonna find you the picture here.
Okay.
Said that, yeah, this is okay. Rothgard Deng was his name. So the visual dictionary hints that this is Dengar, like years
Really?
after undergoing a lot of weird stuff in his private time, I guess. So let me, just so you can see how wacky and off the wall this is. Let me grab a picture here.
Remember that
See,
big alien guy in Maz Kanata's palace that had like the girl kind of sitting on his lap when they
yeah,
first walked in? I forget that character's name. I'm like, why don't they make a figure of that guy? That guy's so cool looking.
that'd be a big figure.
They would.
Okay, so here it is. Yeah, I'm not making this up. This is really like a thing.
That's Dengar.
That's what the visual dictionary hints, that this is Dengar after like undergoing like a series of
Oh, well, I mean, I can
procedures
see
to keep him
elements of
alive.
the armor, sure.
Yeah, the armor's similar.
Yeah.
Um,
I do remember that character, but I did not know that that was supposed to be Dengar.
yeah, I guess so.
I don't know. Why not?
It's in the name Rothgard Ding, so
That's funny.
it's weird.
Well, why don't we have a figure of him?
Yeah, that'd be a kind of a cool figure, I would say. I mean, even Dengar or not, I think I would take that.
Yeah. But I mean, we talked about this once before too. I mean, the Rise of Skywalker was such a strange experience collecting wise because there was very, very little. Even now to this day, I don't think any licensee has really embraced that film. And although I appreciate them going back to the original trilogy and trying to card all of the ones that they've missed, so to speak. But they really didn't do much, and it's crazy because I had skipped that initial release, like when those toys first came out. I kind of skipped all that. I was like, oh, I'll get these later, type of thing. And then I go back to try and find them, and I could pick up almost everybody at pretty much retail, but Rey from Rise of Skywalker in the vintage collection, I don't know what she's going for now, but I had to pay way too much for that figure. That was crazy.
Yeah.
And,
They
and
yeah. They didn't oversaturate them like
no,
they did.
usually they do. The first wave is always like clogging pegs for months to come. And it's I think you started to see then, even like with subsequent waves. I mean, I just never saw some of the waves from 2019. Never saw them in retail. I think one of them went straight to Five Below, but only out in the Midwest. It's weird.
We don't have any Five Belows in San Diego, so
Oh.
I can't go looking. There's one near LA. I saw it a couple, like last month. I saw it when I was driving over there.
Many years ago, I found in Five Below that had a wheelbarrow full of vintage collection figures, $5 each. And I posted a picture online, and every time it pops up in my memories, I still post it again. I'm like, I cannot believe this happened.
You mentioned Marshalls earlier. That was another place that I remember finding vintage collection stuff. I think it was the Attack of the Clones wave with like Peasant Anakin and Padme and Super Battle Droid. I think there might have been some Jedi in there, like Kit Fisto and somebody else. And I found those at Marshalls like one day, like really like cheap. And that was a cool find.
Yeah, my wife loves Marshalls, so we go in whenever we go out every now and then, and I just wander over. The toy aisle is very very small, and it's usually stuff that's months and months old. But you never know. I found that, remember the MTT with it
Hmm.
was in God, I don't remember what line. It was one of the weird lines in 2003, 2015 era, and it was this giant tank with a whole army of crappy battle droids with a couple of cool battle droids and strangely an Obi-Wan. But I found it for like $38.
Wow.
And I'm like, I'm buying it. I already have it, but I'm buying it.
That thing commands a premium these days on
Oh,
eBay.
really?
Yeah.
I bet. I mean, it's huge. And then they made, gosh, I think, and it was Mark Boudreau who showed me this, but they made a mini rig, right? Remember the little tiny vehicles that were like way too small scale, but they made like a little mini rig thing that snaps into it, that it was like an escape pod type thing, and it came with a battle droid pilot that you could fly away. I wish I could remember, but I was at a convention and Mark is there, and I always like talking to Mark because Mark talks more than I do, so that's fun. And he showed me how it attached. I'm like, no way. He goes, oh yeah. He goes, this is the part that I love about being his job is that I get to create all these other things that were like maybe just off screen in the films. I mean, this is my words, not his. You know, and I said to Mark, I'm like, as a kid, okay, the mini rig, what was it, ISP 6? It was a mini rig shuttle. It was like a one person shuttle mini rig figure, because as a kid I couldn't afford the actual shuttle, but I could afford this because it was like $10 or whatever it was back then. And I said, I love that. He goes, and that's why we did them. If you look at some of those mini rig figures from the 80s, I would guess, they're like smaller scaled down versions of other vehicles in the film. Right? There was like a mini one man skiff
Hmm.
because maybe kids couldn't buy the skiff, or they couldn't do a sail barge because that was like way too big. So they made a little version of it.
Yeah.
He's like, and that's why we came up with those little ones, and it was stories like that, which is why I always liked talking to the brand team.
Yeah.
Um, and now he's retired, and he's thank Mark for the Millennium Falcon and every other thing that he's done for the line.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. A legend in toys. And that's somebody that should write a book too.
Oh, I bet he will.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, Dan, we've been going almost 2 hours. Um,
Oh,
yeah, time flies when you're having fun. But I have you coming up on Cantina Chatter once again. Pretty soon. We should probably record pretty soon. I think we talked about doing it pretty soon.
mm-hmm.
But we're doing the Star Wars Modern Toy Line retrospective, which I started I think at the end of 2018, and we're going through every single modern Hasbro Star Wars toy line since the Power of the Force 2. And I think the last one that I left off on was the Saga collection, and that's going to take us into the 30th anniversary collection, and that's the one you're taking part in.
Mm.
Slash a separate episode for Saga Legends, because there's just so much in Saga Legends there too. So we'll be recording that
Cool.
soon.
Yes, I that was such a big line. If you think back, 2007, 2008. I mean, there was so much 30th anniversary of Star Wars, so much happening, so much going on, and I look forward to that because in anticipation to our chat, I've gone through and kind of refreshed my memory of a lot of those things. And I'm telling you, this is what I was saying
Nice.
earlier. A lot of those figures would look great on vintage collection cards, and they really would hold up. They would be welcome additions.
Totally. Yeah, I'm excited to talk about it. And I know a lot of people have been asking, when's the next episode installment in that series coming? Well, it's coming soon. We're recording it soon, within the next hopefully week or two. And yeah, it'll soon be out there for everybody to check out. So I'm really excited to talk to you about
Cool. Thank you.
that. And we'll get to talk about Saga Legends and all the stuff you were alluding to earlier with your involvement in that line with Hasbro and everything. So it'll be cool stuff.
Absolutely. I'm always
Absolutely.
happy to come on and talk. Like I said, my goal is to be on every podcast that there is at some point or another. I used to have my own show, and I didn't enjoy that as much because it was just me talking by myself. And as you can probably tell, I can go on and on and on and on and on. But it's better to be interacting with somebody. So
Mhm.
I'm happy to be a guest anytime, anytime.
Awesome. Well, cool, Dan. It's been a blast. Where can our viewers, listeners go to find you online these days?
Well, mostly I just kind of stick to Facebook and Instagram. I do have a Twitter, but I don't use it very often. Um, I don't know. I think I have a YouTube channel. I have one video. Remember the ice bucket challenge from a few years ago? I think that's like my only
Yes.
video.
Who can forget?
I think I did that because I got nominated for something.
That's
And
funny.
I'm like, how the hell do you do this? Anyway, but yeah, I mostly just kind of stick to that, and I share a lot of links and thoughts about toys and movies and whatever other stuff that I happen to be collecting or finding, and I mix it in there with well, expect this, folks, a lot of pictures of my new grandson whenever we are able to see him again.
Oh,
So yeah,
yeah. Yeah. Congrats again. That's awesome.
thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
So, yeah, fun stuff. Thank you, Jason.
any more comments?
Oh yeah, there's a lot. Great stuff. Thanks so much. Thank you, Toys of the Way. Always a pleasure to have you tuning in here alongside us. Chris, thank you. Appreciate you tuning in. Lots of great content on Bantha Skull lately for sure. And the engagement over there has just been huge lately. So it's awesome to
Mhm.
see that. And yeah, totally. So
Actually,
yeah,
I should say, Bantha Skull has. I feel like Bantha Skull is the spiritual successor to everything that I've done over the years, many years ago, because I check out their site from time to time, and they do things I couldn't even imagine with their databases and stuff like that, because I never really got into that. But it's a great resource for all the different figures that they have made. You know, I mean, I helped write a book about it. There's a website that's more up to date than the book could ever be. So that's cool. Plug to them.
yeah, awesome stuff. Well, cool. Thank you, Dan. Really appreciate your you staying up late and being here with us. It's been fun. And thanks to everybody in the chat, everyone who's been tuning in, listening to us, and yeah, putting up with our toy talk and our as we sip our cocktails. And did you finish that glass?
I have a little bit left. I'll
A
finish.
little bit left, just enough. There you go. My man.
Usually
Awesome.
I have a couple beers over here, but I'm currently out of beer, so that's very sad. But yeah, I said, let me go get that whiskey upstairs. That'll be nice. Oh, thanks, man. See, it really does. It does make me feel good. It does. A lot of the BS I put up with behind the scenes, it makes it worth it.
It should. I mean, you're the man, and you
Yeah.
absolutely, have contributed so much to this line and this hobby, and have been a huge advocate for fans and collectors, and we all really appreciate it. So thank you so much for everything you've done for the hobby over the years.
Well, thank you for saying that. It has been my pleasure, for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Dan. Thank you, everybody, and Dan, we'll talk soon. Everybody have a good night,
Yep.
and may the force be with you.
And also with you. I think that's now canon.
Yeah, you're right. It is as of Mandalorian. Yes. Bye.